Gameweek 16 team selection and the third video on the FPL Joe YouTube channel. Today we'll be recapping how Gameweek 15 went, all of the latest on injuries, and then moving on to Gameweek 16 team selection and chip planning. So 58 points all out, a small green arrow up from 235k to 203k. Munoz missed out in this one, so the Qua auto-subbed on for him. We'll be discussing the effects of this injury shortly. After a poor game week overall, having scored only 40 points, and on a live rank of 300k, United's fixture away to Wolves was all that stood between me and a big red arrow. Bruno was my team's flop last week, scoring only 4 points with a captain's armband, while Haaland and Foden went nuclear, combining for 31 points, or 45 points for the majority who captained Haaland. But this week versus Wolves, who've been the standout team to target in the league so far this season, us Bruno owners finally received some compensation. The United skipper logged a massive 18-point haul, scoring twice and assisting once, converting from the spot after missing 2 of 3 so far this season. Bruno looked fantastic this game, registering over 2 XGI and was integral to so much of what United did. It is important to be clear, Wolves were dreadful yet again this game, so we should take this haul with a pinch of salt, but it did show us the potential Bruno has as a point scorer when United are firing. So for thoroughly saving my game week, Bruno earns the team's MVP award for Game Week 15. In other news, I finally hopped on the Foden train this week and was not disappointed. The City midfielder continued his astonishing run of form with yet another goal and an assist for a 12-pointer. His price continues to rise higher and higher, already up by 0.5 million since the start of Game Week 14, and almost guaranteed to rise in price yet again tonight. That marks the second game week in a row that he'll have had 3 price rises, which is the limit for a single game week. For those who have yet to jump on Foden, it's getting harder and harder to argue against him. While there's no guarantee he'll continue to rake in points the way that he has already, he's already an integral part of the City team that looks to be returning to its former strength, and individually he's showing all the flair and confidence we saw from him during the 2023-24 season, when he racked up a 230-point total. He has overperformed his expected numbers, but to put that into context, since the start of the 2023-24 season, he's scored 11 goals from outside the box, more than any other player in the league in that time period, so it's not hard to see how he manages to do it so consistently, and we expect him to keep up these kind of performances while he's on this run of form. After annihilating my rank last week, I and many others opted to play it safe and captain Haaland in Game Week 15. As is FPL, he flopped. Haaland's third 2-pointer in the last 4 weeks, registering just a single shot and being substituted before the 70th minute to rest before City's mid-game week against Real Madrid. Luckily, at a whopping 197% effective ownership, his points tally this week would have had zero impact to my overall rank either way. Still, captaining Haaland, then Bruno, then Haaland in the last 3 weeks has actually cost me 35 points compared to if I'd gone the other way around in the last 3. Besides that, there's not a lot else to say for Game Week 15, with blanks for Minter and Voltemada in fairly good fixtures, and Arsenal and Palace assets losing their clean sheets. Munoz missed out here at the last minute, which we've since learned is due to a knee injury, which will have him out of action for up to 6 weeks. So looking on to Game Week 16, there are a load of interesting points to cover. First things first, the AFCON transfers dropped this week, topping us up to 5 free transfers. FPL managers have recorded unprecedented transfer activity, driving up the prices of high priority picks like Foden and mass selling basically all underperforming assets. For me, I already had one guaranteed move I wanted to make, Saka in. Saka hasn't exactly set the world alight in FPL since returning to Arsenal's starting lineup in Game Week 6, with just a single double-digit haul in Game Week 11 against Sunderland. However, he's continued to put up fantastic attacking numbers, and there's no better time to see those realised than against Wolves. As a bonus, he was given a rest in midweek, so he looks certain to start, famous last words. To facilitate the switch, I need to free up some funds while making space in midfield. So earlier this week, with price changes imminent, I made the choice to remove both Minter and Voltemada. Minter simply hasn't passed the eye test in recent weeks, and his numbers aren't anything to shout about either. While he does have a good couple of fixtures on the way, I'll have the option of bringing him back in, if needed, for one of those using my free hit before the chips reset in Game Week 20. As for Voltemada, he had a disappointing showing against Burnley, registering just 1 shot all game. With Vissa returning to the pitch, Voltemada will have some competition for minutes, and we'd expect this to impact his minutes even more noticeably over the congested winter fixture schedule. So that kicks off my Game Week 16 transfers with Saka and Guiu in. Guiu will sit on my bench pretty much every week as a non-playing forward, but it's not out of the question that he comes off the bench for 1 or 2 points in the event that multiple unanticipated injuries derail my starting lineup in a future game week. So while I do usually advocate against early transfer moves, with the significant impact of AFCON transfers on price changes, I took the risk and it's just about paid off. After rearranging my team and bench, here's how my team looks. The only unexpected caveat is Munoz's red flag, after the midweek confirmation that he'll be out for up to 6 weeks. In FPL, for a defender of this value, that's a guaranteed sell. He's had one price drop already since the news, which doesn't impact my team value because of the price that I bought him, but with more falls expected to follow and good alternatives available, he'll be leaving my team this game week. Timber is also yellow flagged, having picked up a kick in Game Week 15, which he's still recovering from, meaning he didn't travel at all for Arsenal's midweek game in Belgium. As per usual, Arteta's comments provided no reassurance whatsoever to owners. But with Arsenal already missing Gabriel, Saliba and Calafiori, the latter serving a suspension, there's increased pressure to get him out on the pitch against Wolves. Some managers are using their abundance of transfers to move him to Hincapié, who's effectively nailed until Gabriel returns. We do have to ask the question of how resolute Arsenal's defence is likely to be with so many of their backline struggling with injury, especially if that means moving to a player who might only have a couple of game weeks left before needing to be transferred out. So when it comes to who to bring in, it's time to assess upcoming fixtures. Looking at the next 6 game weeks for all clubs, sorted by fixture difficulty, easiest at the top, we've got a couple of key teams to target. Brentford top the list, which holds true even if we extend to the next 8 game weeks instead, so doubling up on them with a defender transfer to Collins is one option I'm heavily considering. Fulham have a great next 3 fixtures, but I've already got Anderson from their defence and I don't want to burn transfers bringing in midfielders or forwards who I don't plan to keep long term. Newcastle are the other team I'm interested in, but their best fixtures start around game week 19, so there's no pressure to jump on them yet. My plan is to transfer Munoz to Collins, which also leaves plenty of spare cash in the bank, giving me the option to upgrade Potts to Bruno G or Szoboszlai in the coming weeks. I'll then substitute him into the starting 11 in place of Lacroix. Looking again at the upcoming fixtures, eagle-eyed viewers might notice the dotted line between game week 19 and game week 20 that marks the halfway point for the season, after which all chips will be reset and you'll lose any that you hadn't already used. For me, that's just the free hit chip, and I'm currently planning on using it on game week 17 to bring in Bournemouth and Brighton assets, who play Burnley and Sunderland that week. I did consider using it this week to target teams like Fulham vs Burnley, Aston Villa vs West Ham and Chelsea vs Everton, but with an already well set up team and a preference not to drop my City assets, the benefits feel minimal. It would be nice to swap my Arsenal defence around to guaranteed starters like Hincapié and Lewis Skelly, but there's every chance Timber does start, so that's not enough of a pull for me either. The other option was using it in game week 19 to load up on Newcastle assets, and bring in some Liverpool assets like Szoboszlai if he's not picked up the 5th yellow card the week before. But with Newcastle having a stellar fixture run starting in game week 19, I'll likely just buy those players outright in game week 19 anyway, and honestly, we don't know where Liverpool will be at that point. One really important note about chips is that if you haven't played any so far, firstly, you've got the kind of patience that many managers can only dream of, and secondly, you need to use a chip every week in the next 4 weeks or they'll go to waste. When to use each one depends on how your team looks, so it will differ for everybody. Triple captain is the easiest. You'll likely want to use it in game week 17 for Haaland's game against West Ham. If you do want to go differential, using it this week on Saka is probably the way to go. For bench boost, use a free tool like planfpl.com to see which week your bench looks best in, and play it then. You're aiming for 10 points minimum, and if you can't find a game week where you're close to that, consider playing your wildcard the week before to set up a 15-man squad, which will provide you with a decent bench for the following week. For free hit, it's almost the opposite. Look for a week where your team looks the worst, or where you're missing potential big hitters. For example, Semenyo and Senesi against Burnley in game week 17, or Bruno G and Bruno Fernandes in game week 19. For wildcard, if you don't need it to set up a good bench boost, you've likely got 2 good options. First is to play it this game week to put out any fires, and you'll retain all 5 free transfers to carry forward, but with an already solid team. Second, if you don't need to do that, use it in game week 19 to set yourself up as best as possible for the second half of the season. If you've already used transfers, using either the free hit or the wildcard will refund all of them, which is great if you messed up your transfers before the injury doubts came to light. Of course, technically you don't have to play the wildcard or the free hit, but there are very few managers in the world right now who are lucky enough to be able to say they've got the perfect team moving forwards. The bench boost and triple captain are guaranteed points increases, so there's no reason not to play those. Now looking at the predicted points for Game Week 16 courtesy of FPL Review and Fantasy Football Hub. With Wolves continuing to ship chances to their opponents, Saka gets the captain's armband this week. In the 15 game weeks so far, Wolves have gifted at least one double-digit haul to the opposition's team in 12 of them. While this could easily be an Arsenal defender with a clean sheet and a bullet header, I do have slight doubts about Arsenal's defensive stability with so many active injuries, and it only takes one mistake for a clean sheet wipeout which would also wipe this haul. Meanwhile for Arsenal's attack, the sky is the limit, and I have a feeling this could be the week where Saka starts being referred to as a quote-unquote essential FPL pick, just as Bruno is being after last week. Vice-captain goes to Haaland, although we've no reason to doubt that Saka's captaincy will carry through. Other reasonable alternatives are Thiago against Leeds and Bruno against Bournemouth. It's worth bearing in mind that we don't know for sure yet whether United's AFCON players, namely Mbumo, Ahmad and Mazraoui, will actually be available for selection this game week. United is still yet to find out whether these players will have to depart on Monday, which is the same day they play Bournemouth. On the other end of the spectrum, Brentford's Dango Ouattara, who's been responsible for winning 4 of Thiago's 6 penalties this season, might actually be available for selection in Game Week 17 against Wolves, due to scheduling of his first AFCON game. And with that, the Game Week 16 deadline is almost here. If you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would go a huge way in supporting this new channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back to prepare for Game Week 17 next week. Best of luck, and fingers crossed for another green arrow.